All right. So good afternoon. Actually, what's interesting is I was live about an hour ago. I rarely do two lives in the same day. We had Cliff Weiner on before talking from the POA. He was talking about the EMT issues that the Villages has had, and I was actually really intrigued. This was probably, Pastor, how long ago was this? You were spotlighted in the Daily Sun in the newspaper. How long ago was it?
It's probably about a month. It seems
Been
like a
about a
long
month, hasn't it? And I'm really intrigued. It's actually been a couple of years. Been thinking about connecting with people that are in the villages, around the villages, special people that have done some interesting things in their lives. I've noticed that the Daily Sun is doing that, and I think I could probably my goal is to do a little bit better job and dig a little bit deeper, right? Like, so so I think there's a lot of people that are in our community that people just don't know about, right? Like they're not familiar with who lives in the community. So my guest right now is Pastor Bruce Dillman from the Hope Lutheran Church. And by the way, where is your church located exactly?
Well, we actually have three campuses. I'm currently at our main campus, which is at the corner of County Road 466 and Morse Boulevard. We also have a northern campus, which is off on Lake Weir, outside the villages. It's the former St. John's Lutheran Church that we have since taken over that, and that gives us a chance. That church is outside the villages, and so, for example, we have a food pantry that we do. My wife works with that, and I do as well. It gives us a chance to do some of those things that you don't typically see in the villages. And our third site is we have property on Megason Road, right at the Turnpike in Warm Springs. And at this point, we're worshiping every Sunday in Everglades Rec Center until we do finally end up with something built there.
All right, right. Well, I happen to know one of your parishioners in Ocala, and John Dean has been attending that particular church for a while. That's great. So let's talk about why you were spotlighted. Like, let's talk about your history. Tell us your history. Your background. Let's start there.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. And growing up, I grew up in a family that was raised Catholic. My mom was Catholic, my dad was Presbyterian. So we went to Catholic church. Not particularly overly involved in the church, I would say, but I still, after I graduated high school, went away to Purdue University to study to be a doctor. But at some point, I really felt the calling to be a minister in the Catholic Church, to be a priest. Went in the seminary and I was ordained a priest and was active as a Catholic priest for 4 years. Upon leaving ministry, I left back in 1986. I really wanted to be a teacher, but there were no openings at that time for teachers. So I ended up actually becoming, I was going to be a math teacher. So I'd studied math. I went and looked for a job that I thought would involve math. Well, it ended up being an agent for the Internal Revenue Service. So,
That involves a little bit of math, right?
well, and that's what I thought, and really didn't think about what else that was going to entail. And so I spent several years actually being a tax auditor, which was for someone of my the kinds of things I like was not easy for me to do. But I did that. I eventually ended up working on the director's staff and was public affairs officer. So I did a lot of radio shows and TV shows and things like that. When there was a downsizing, I left and ended up going into public accounting, since that's what I was already doing was accounting. Did that for several years with Arthur Anderson before they went defunct with a small other firm. But I ended up teaching training when I was there, and that really helped me realize that I needed to go back to teaching. So that's what I did for the rest of my career. I ended up teaching in a high school. My wife and I both taught the same high school. She taught English, I taught math. We coached tennis. We did all kinds of other things. We retired, came down here to the villages where her parents had already bought a house, had been here from the very beginning. And once I got down here, sort of rediscovered the call and ended up becoming a pastor here at Hope.
So what year did you move into the villages?
We actually moved here in 2016, but we had been coming here since 1986. That's when her
Right.
parents came. So
Right.
back when it was just Orange Blossom Gardens, that was when they bought in the historic side.
Yeah. vastly different. I was just talking to Cliff Weiner. He's saying that there's still 20 people alive that were grandfathered into the program where they can get free garbage and free cable. Because that was a lawsuit from 1980 something, right? Like it's just 20 people are still alive that are in that program.
That is amazing. And of course, that was right there in our neighborhood. And we inherited that house. And it was a double wide, a manufactured home on Orange Blossom Gardens. And what we did was, that was that brief period of time when the Villages was tearing down houses over there or moving them and rebuilding. And so we ended up getting a rebuild. So we have a rebuilt house on West Schwartz, and that's where we live right now.
You're still there. You're still on that side then.
We are still on the exact same property where her parents bought in 1986.
That's I think oftentimes that's an underappreciated side of the Villages. One, it's affordable and, you have the same access as everybody else. What's your favorite thing about being on that side?
Well, gosh, there's all kinds. Probably my favorite thing is the easy accessibility of everything. Walmart's there, the Wawa's built, Target, all of those stores that are around there. Especially appreciate it when I remember when my in-laws were there, that the closest Publix was in Bellevue. We had to drive there. So looking back at where it was, 40 years ago, it's very accessible. I love the maturity of the area. We have the trees. Tends to be a little bit quieter. We don't have all of everything that's going on in the southern part of the Villages right now. But since I do a lot of ministering at our southern campus, I've basically run the full gamut of the Villages from north to south quite a bit.
So what would you say is the number one thing that you learned as an IRS agent? Like what was the biggest surprise?
Well, I think that the biggest thing for me is all people deserve to be treated as people, even when you're undergoing a tax audit. And I think that as I heard stories of people who were not treated that way, it made me want all the more to understand that, most people who come in for an audit are scared to death. They're not aware that they've done anything wrong. There's no reason to treat them with any kind of suspicion. So I think that's probably what I most wanted to do when I was working with somebody on an audit, was to assume the best, never assume the worst, and just kind of work with them as person to person.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. All right. Now it seems like you went from, I know it's not quite this way, but it seems like you've gone from one extreme to the other. People would look at it this way, right? IRS.
It kind of feels that way. Yeah. It feels like I've been all across. If you were to ask my wife, she would tell you that I've basically done just, all kinds of strange things. Yes.
So, all right. Biggest thing that you've learned, or the biggest surprise that you've had in becoming a pastor?
But the biggest surprise for me is that when I retired from teaching, and when I taught I taught high school math, I taught calculus, in fact, so high level math every day. I taught night school 2 nights a week at students who were dropouts. I coached tennis. I was a mentor for people that were becoming national board certified. So I was working unbelievably hard. I could not wait to retire and come down here and be an ambassador on a golf course and just take it easy. And I was looking so forward to just being able to ride around in a golf cart and offer people sand and water and hope that their round is going well. And I did that. I did it for the first year that I was here. But there was something that was missing, something more that I felt I needed to do. So the biggest surprise to me is that I wasn't able to just be happy with relaxing, playing golf, and just kind of working on the golf course.
That is so interesting. I've been selling real estate for 21 years and brokering, and I'm not really in production now. We've got over 90 agents in our office, and one of the things I've seen over the years and talking to clients and talking to agents who are connecting with clients is exactly that, which is people need purpose, right? We have to be in action. We need we need something to do. There needs to be something we can look forward to on a daily basis. And without that purpose, people struggle. And I've noticed where a lot of our clients are sometimes busier than we are, or they're busier after retirement because they've got 4 or 5, whether it's dragon boating or mahjong or bingo and golf and lunch and some other recreation that they're involved in, whether it's the POA or maybe they're part of a thrift store. They're part, they're doing these things, and they've got more activities on their schedule sometimes than we do.
I think so. When we would come down here to visit my in-laws, they would warn us how busy they were. And we always thought that was kind of funny because here we were in our careers and they were retired. And they'd say, oh, well, we have golf and we have bowling and, we're in the Ohio Club and we do all of these things. And then when you first come here, and we had a counselor from Lutheran Counseling Services who was going to come in and offer a workshop, but she didn't know anything about the villages. And so we started telling her about the villages, and she kind of interviewed people. She said, I think we need to do a class in transitions, because she said, I think a lot of people are trying to transition from, it could be from not working, from working now to not working. They never saw their spouse to now you're always together. You had no free time. Now you have all kinds of free time. And I think you're right. A lot of people do eventually transition into filling their life back up. But when you first come here, there's kind of this blank slate and you're sort of, now what do I do? I've been so busy every day and now there's nothing going on and I need to meet new people. I'm in a new house. And so we have a lot of people, I think, in the villages who, when they first come in, that's where they are. They're trying to, okay, what's my next path going to be?
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what kind of, obviously, church plays a role in that. Obviously, there's community, there's a lot of different things. What does your church do in getting people together? Tell me about what you're working on.
Well, as I said earlier, one of the big things that we're involved in right now, since my wife does the food pantry up at Lake Weir, that's become a real big part of both her life and then my life by extension. But also with our southern site, that right now is very much a blank slate.
Mm.
As people continue to move in down south so quickly, we're trying to do all that we can to meet those needs, not just on worshiping on the weekend, but we really want to get things going during the week. And without having a facility, it makes it more difficult. But we have some grassroots kinds of things where things are happening in people's homes, and we hope to continue to see that to happen.
So, obviously, going through COVID, we've been in this, it seems like 10 years already, but it's only been 18, 19 months or whatever it's been. And what type of things have you found yourself doing to keep everybody together?
Well, when we were locked down, which for us was not a real long period of time, we asked parishioners to keep in touch with the 5 people in the directory above their name and below their name so that everyone was being contacted by other people. But as far as worship goes, it was so bizarre for us that here we weren't even doing worship together as pastors and other people. We were each filming our own individual part. And then we had a technician putting it together and putting it online.
Interesting.
So for several months there, if I was preaching a sermon, I was preaching it to an empty church, just looking at a camera.
Right.
But for the last year or so, we've been back in. At one time, of course, we had physical spacing and we've relaxed things, and we've kind of gone back now where we don't require masks, but we encourage them. We require them of people who are working, but for the most part, we're not limiting our numbers. And so more and more people are coming back. We have a social supper. In fact, it's going to start here at 5:00 on Wednesday. We're back to having those. I'll be doing evening prayer tonight. So we're offering many of the things that we weren't offering there for a while. They're pretty much back now.
Okay, great. So how does one find you, and how does one become involved with Hope Lutheran?
Well, gosh, there's so many different ways. You mentioned the article from the Daily Sun. I've heard from so many people who just read that, and there's something in my past. It could have been that, they grew up Catholic or whatever the case might be, and they've come in and we've talked. I actually have a wedding scheduled with a couple that I met that came just from reading that article. So in some cases, it's just calling our church here. And if people want to talk to me particularly, they can ask. If I'm not here, then it goes to my voicemail. We have a lot of people who just come to one of our services. We have services at 8 and 10 on Sunday here at our central campus and down south, at 10 at Lake Weir, and then on Saturday night here at 4 and 6. Some people come and we just talk to them at the end of service, and we set up a meeting and they come in. I've been really amazed by coming here that I think in the early days when Hope was first being built, um, it was mostly a lot of Lutherans who were moving here from the north. Typically, Lutherans come from Wisconsin, Minnesota, the places where you understand why they're coming to Florida. But since I've been here, and of course, I'm an obvious example of this, I have nothing Lutheran in my background that brought me here. So more and more people are becoming part of us here where they don't necessarily have Lutheran, but they like something about the message that we give. We have a very freeing and accepting message of God's love for all people, and it resonates with a lot of other people.
Yeah, message is the biggest thing, is what I've found as well. You know, you mentioned something that I think is really interesting. I wasn't thinking about bringing this up, but you thought you're talking about story, and I think the more and more that we tell our story and get our story out, you know, I think for so many of us, there's a story within our stories that can help other people.
Absolutely. And, you know, life is story and people love stories. And there was a reason that Jesus taught using stories because people like stories. And so anytime we can make anything about story, it resonates with other people. And once we get other people telling their own stories, and people come here, what I love about the villages is they come from all over the country, even all over the world as we meet other people. But I mean, I've met people from places I had no knowledge of, Minnesota and Wisconsin. Well, now I'm working in a congregation where there are so many people from those northern states that I have learned so much. And it's wonderful being exposed to so many different kinds of people.
Pastor, I definitely appreciate your time today. I'm so glad you came on. It's a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but I want to do more of this. And I'm good.
Anytime I can be of any assistance to you in any way, just call on me. I'd be more than happy to do that.
Pastor, I appreciate it.
Okay, Glenn, take care. Have
You
a good
too.
day.
Take care.